let's get back into the reading of Strange Creatures from Time and Space by John A. Keel. So far it's been a very interesting reading. I think part 2 is best so far that I've posted, or going to post. Let's see, page 82. We are creatures from the Black Lagoon. And then we're now reading different accounts to the states. And we started with Alabama and the Bugger. And it's very similar to what is a mural that's in the Vatican. Or now, California. The following account was published in 1896 in a booklet titled The Hermit of Siskiyou by L.W. Music. And that's interesting. I don't even know how to pronounce that, but I'm assuming it's something like Siskiyou. And it's good to read these books because you discover new books that take you even deeper down the rabbit hole. Screw Hermit of and I'm sure I'm not spelling it right or pronouncing it right, excuse me. But long enough pause for you to look it up yourself. Let's see if it's on archive.org. But it looks like we might have one. Might have a winner. It's not a very big book. 100 pages. So we got that one. Okay. Note 1. Del Nort record correspondent writing from Happy Camp in Siskiyou County. I'm sure I'm not pronounced right. It's January 2nd, 1886. Discourses as follows. I do not remember to have seen any reference to the wild man which haunts this part of the country, so I shall allude to him briefly. Not a great while since Mr. Jack Dover, one of our most trustworthy citizens, while hunting, saw an object standing 150 yards from him, picking berries and tender shoots from the bushes. The thing was gigantic size, about 7 feet high, with a bulldog head and short ears and long hair. It was also furnished with a beard and was free from hair on such parts of his body as is common among men. Its voice was shrill or soprano and very human, like that of a woman in great fear. Mr. Dover could not see its footprints as it walked on hard soil. He aimed his gun at the animal, and whatever it was, several times, but because it was so human, would not shoot. The range of the curiosity of it's between a marble mountain and the vicinity of Happy Camp. A number of people have seen it and all agree that their descriptions, except some, make it taller than others. It is apparently herbivorous and makes winter quarters in some caves in Marble Mountain. 3. It ran up like a man, swinging long hairy arms, said Ray Kerr of McKinleyville, California, as he described his sighting of Bigfoot on Sunday, October 2nd, 1958. He was near Bluff Creek when he saw it. It happened so fast, it's kind of hard to give a really close description, but it was covered with hair. It had no clothes. It looked 8 to 10 feet tall to me. Roy Wallace said he had seen a similar creature a short time earlier. It was hairy, walked stooped over, had long dangling arms, and was 4 feet across the shoulders. The mutilated bodies of 4 dogs were found in the area by Curtis Mitchell, an Indian, on the evening of Kerr's sighting. They looked as if they had been ripped apart, he said. One of them had apparently been slammed against a tree. The bodies were still warm when they were discovered off the Elk River Road, about 5 miles south of Eureka, California. 4. Charles Winslow was driving home in Riverside, California on Sunday night, November 8, 1958, and as he neared the point where North Main Street crosses Santa Ana River, something leaped in front of his car. It had a round, scarecrowish head, he said, like something out of Halloween. It wasn't human. It had a longer arm than anything I'd ever seen. When it saw me in the car, it reached all the way back to the windshield and began clawing at me. It didn't have any ears. The face was all round. The eyes were shining like something fluorescent, and it had a protuberant mouth. Well, I can't say that. Protuberant mouth. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. It was scaly, like leaves. Wentz reached for his .22 pistol he carried in his car and stomped on the gas. The thing fell back from the car and it growled. The noise it made didn't sound human. I think I hit it. I heard something hit the pan under the car. There were long sweeping scratches on his windshield, but nothing was found at the site. The next night, a 6-foot-tall black thing leaped out of the bushes near Wenzel's site and frightened another motorist. The Wenzel story was widely circulated by the wire services and has become a monster classic. 5. Walking home in late evening, a resident of Hoopa Valley, identified only as Peters, saw a strange creature jump out, uttered a surprised grunt, jumped a 5-foot fence and one agile leap, and disappeared in the darkness. It was not a bear, appeared not too much taller than a man, but was tremendous width. 6. 5 witnesses reported that a tall, hairy creature was discovered ransacking their car while they were picnicking in a forest outside of San Diego, California. In July of 1966, it growled and ran off, they said, hiding behind a tree and springing at them as they later drove past. It tried to reach the window of the car, they claimed. Further, on, they saw another tall figure sitting by the side of the road, apparently watching them go by rather nonchalantly. They said these beings were covered with reddish hair and were well over 6 feet tall. They were not bears or other known animals. 7. In late July 1966, 2 frightened teenage girls reported that they had in a car near Lattell Creek outside of Fontana, California, when a bush beast suddenly stooped up beside their vehicle. They described it as being 7 feet tall, with brown hair and covered with moss and slime. They report kicking off a monster epidemic, and over 200 people, most of them armed to the teeth, poured into the area on a massive monster hunt. The Bernardino County Sheriff's Office said the amateur bush beast hunters were swarming nightly over the barren foothills, filling the night with wild gunfire. The slime-covered ass got away. Fonta is only about 20 miles north of Riverside, site of the 1958 Winslow sighting. There has also been considerable UFO activity in this particular area over the past few years. 8. A treasure hunter, Harold Lancaster, So Harold Lancaster was prospecting in the Borrego Sink near Borrego Springs, California, in July 1968, when he saw an ape man. I was camped up on a mesa one morning when I saw a man walking in the desert. Lancaster reported the figure came closer. I thought it was another prospector. When I picked up my binoculars and saw the strangest sight of my life, it was a real giant ape man. Lancaster fired his .22 pistol in the air. I was frightened. I was afraid the beast might get too close. He said the Sandman jumped a good 3 feet off the ground when the sounds of the shots reached him. He turned his head, looked toward me, and then took off running the other direction. Florida. Because we're now in Florida. And number 9, in 1963, several persons on a ranch outside Jalapa, Florida, said they had seen an ape-like creature running across the field. A prominent cattleman and a citrus grower claimed he was in a group that had been within a few feet of the creature, and that it was definitely an ape of some kind. In 1967, the Jalapa ape was back. Eugene Crosby said it was 5 feet tall, hairy, very broad, and walked on 2 feet. I threw a tire tube at him. Other stories described how a 6 foot tall ape attacked 2 hunters on the Desert Mormon Ranch. They are supposed to have shot at it, and it went screaming into the darkness. Later, an unoccupied tent house on the ranch was broken into, and furnishings were broken and scattered, and blood stains were found. And number 10, A harsh coughing sound made Ralph Bud Chambers of Elfers, Florida, look around as he was walking in some woods near the Anclote River, maybe that's what it is. In the summer of 1966, he saw a giant hairy thing standing in the trees. The thing had a rancid, putrid odor like stale urine, Chambers said. He hurried away and brought back a friend. They followed the creature's tracks into the swampy area. Chambers' dogs refused to follow the scent, but whined and could not be coaxed into going near the creature's trail. Later, Chambers had another sighting. He said the thing was over 7 feet tall and at least 4 feet wide at the chest. And the first one I saw was much bigger than 7 feet. But easily 4 feet. Probably had to be more than 4 feet, more like 5. Anyways, the reason I can say that because it got 15 feet in front of my face. 11. In the summer of 1967, Chambers was awakened by a howling of one of his dogs. He looked out and saw the creature standing in his backyard. The thing just seemed to stare straight ahead. This time the dog was so mad that it did attack the creature. Probably because the dog felt the thing was invading home territory. The dog started snapping at his legs, but the thing did not take any notice at the dog. The dog kept biting at his ankles and feet. The creature very slowly and methodically turned and started walking down a road that leads back to the swamp and the river, Chambers reported. Number 12, an alleged UFO landing had occurred in Brooksville, Florida in 1965. There has been much UFO activity throughout Florida in the past 20 years. During the peak flat period of March through April 1966, Mrs. Eula Lewis of Brooksville reported that local residents were being disturbed by inexplicable shrill screaming sounds. She heard her dogs barking one night, and when she looked out the window, she saw a big hairy thing standing in the yard. The thing was swinging its arms, and the dogs were yapping to beat the hell trying to get it. Okay, and the dogs were yapping to beat the hell trying to get to it. It started going back into the woods with the dog still chasing it. 13. There were several hairy monster reports around Brooksville in 1966 through 67. In May of 67, Joan Reitner, so Jones Reitner, or Joanne, Joan, I guess it'd be Joan Reitner, was invited to a ranch near Newport Richey when strange three-toed tracks had been found. The county sheriff revealed that cattle were disappearing. No truck tracks or other evidence had been found to lead to the rustlers. Just where does a rustler put a full-grown cow? A sheriff deputy asked Mrs. Reitner. Sure as hell not in his back pocket. 14. A young woman was changing a tire on a lonely stretch of highway outside of Brooksville, Florida. On Wednesday night, November 30, 1966, when she heard a noise in the bushes and became aware of the most unpleasant odor. Then a huge thing with large green eyes and an eerie greenish glow on one side of its hairy torso, stood up beside the road and studied her. She was terrified. The creature walked off into the woods when another car came along and stopped. Number 15, there's a terrible smell around here. Can't you smell it? The girl complained. She was one of the 4 teenagers parked in a lover's lane near Elfers, Florida in January 1967. As others took deep breaths, an animal about the size of a large chimpanzee sprang onto the hood of the car. Then we panicked. The driver later told investigators, Joanne Whitener, the thing looked like a big chimp, but it had greenish in color and with the glowing green eyes. I started the motor and the thing jumped off and ran back into the woods. We tore like blazes back to the dance we were supposed to be attending. A police officer from Newport Richey later visited the site and found a sticky green substance which remains unidentified. Georgia now. We're in Georgia. Number 16. In August of 1956, Joseph Wally, an employee of the Georgia Department of Forestry, was driving an open Jeep about 30 miles outside Edison, Georgia, when a 6-foot-tall, dark gray, hairy man-shaped creature blundered out of the bushes and chased him. It grabbed at him, apparently trying to haul him from the Jeep, scratching his arm. Wally said it looked like a gorilla, except it had claws and long pointed ears. He was not anxious to go back for a closer look. Number 7, a man named, that's 7, number 17, a man named Tant King, I guess as I pronounced it, was walking in a field near Edison, Georgia one night in 1956 when he was frightened by a little naked hairy man about 3 feet tall who came out of a nearby woods and walked along the edge of a fence. Other men called to the scene, found tracks and strips of white curly hair about 3 inches long on the fence. The hair was analyzed at a local crime lab and found to be human. A young reporter covered the story and wrote a yarn about a creature 8 feet tall. Much to Mr. King's annoyance, a zoologist named O.K. Fletcher speculated it could have been a kangaroo. Illinois, number 18. The Reverend Lipton Harpole was taking a stroll one evening in 1941 near his home outside of Mount Vernon, Illinois, when he paused to light his pipe, and suddenly a beast leaped from a nearby tree, knocking off his hat and knocking the pipe out of his mouth. Harpole said it jumped up and down while making a very queer sound. It was, he felt, of an ape family about 3 feet taller and dark brown in color. I didn't say about 3 feet tall and dark brown in color. This is a true story as was ever told, Harpole's brother said. In 1941 through 42, scores of people near Mount Vernon, Illinois, reported seeing a large hairy humanoid, usually described as a large baboon. When farmers tried to pursue it, they said that it was able to leap ditches 20 feet wide with ease. It killed at least one dog near Bonnie, Illinois. Large posses of armed men searched the region in vain. Although it left a trail of footprints and dead animals, it seemed to have vanished into thin air. And number 19, in an interview with Lauren E. Coleman in November 1962, Stephen Collins said that he, Robert Earl, and two unidentified men had seen a large gray animal standing upright in the middle of a creek east of Decatur, Illinois. Off East William Road, they felt it was definitely not a bear. Number 20. It looked like a half-man, half-horse, said James McKinney of Centerville, Illinois, when he tried to describe the creature he had seen in May 1963. Centerville police received more than 50 calls within a few days, all reporting a strange animal. The police searched failed to find anything. Number 21. 4 young people were parked in a car in the Montezuma Hills outside of Decatur, Illinois on September 22, 1965, when a black male-like monster approached the car. The young people fled, but later the boys returned to the spot alone and again saw the monster. The police officers searched the area fruitlessly. We don't know what they saw, one officer said, but they appeared to be well frightened. Number 22, Tim Bullock and Barbara Smith were in a car parked near Chittyville, Illinois, north of Harran, on August 11, 1968. At 8:30 p.m., a giant figure suddenly appeared from the bushes, badly frightening the couple. They said it was 10 feet tall. That was about the size of my first one I saw. With a first close encounter I saw, I should say. With a head as large as a steering wheel and a round, hairy face. It threw dirt at them through the window. Bullock returned to the spot the next day and found a large depression in the grass. People claimed that dogs in the area had been carrying on for the previous 2 weeks. The editor of Harran, Illinois spokesman did not publish the story. He felt it was the work of some local practical jokester. Indiana, 23. Number 23. In 1962, a group of young people in a graveyard at Bull Clay Springs, Indiana, near Richmond, reportedly saw a 7-foot-tall creature with red eyes. It stood on 2 feet, but ran on all fours, ape-like, and was covered with white and silver hair. Footprints found showed 4 long front toes. Kentucky, number 24. Trimble County, Kentucky, was plagued with monster mania in June 1962. A farmer named Owen Pike said he saw a thing when it attacked and mauled his dogs. One a collie, the other a German shepherd. He described it as black, 6 foot tall, with hanging arms that reached to his knees. On June 8th, Siles McKinney claimed the creature killed one of his calves. The calf carcass was found 15 feet outside of its enclosure, and the gate was still shut. Claw marks were found around the barn, and traces of black hair were also discovered. Examination of the calf indicated that it had been killed by a blow on the head. Other animals in the area disappeared or were found mutilated. Sheriff Kerr's claim took the matter very seriously. 7 police dogs and a helicopter and a posse scoured the area. Large footprints were found, like those of a giant dog, but various eyewitnesses attested that it was a large ape or bear, a gorilla or a big something or another with reddish hair, and was the general description. J. Dan Webster, professor of zoology at Hanover, Indiana, said, "I suspect it was a Great Dane, of which there are several in the area." Simultaneously with the Trimble County scare, citizens in Hazel, Kentucky, were out hunting for a snake 28 feet long, which had been seen there. 25. There's Michigan. That's a very good place to stop. It's getting close to me in my area, so. Michigan, number 25. There is a swamp near Charlotte, Michigan, called Gorilla Swamp because several years ago people were reportedly saw a huge gorilla wandering around. At least it walked on 2 feet and was covered with hair. Data is skimpy. Number 26. This is one of the shortest stories in the files of Lauren Coleman. In the year 1937, Saginaw, Michigan, a fisherman sitting on a bank in Saginaw River, of the Saginaw River, is reputed to have seen a man-like monster climbing up the riverbank, lean upon a tree, and then return to the river. The man suffered a nervous breakdown. Number 27, 2 young men, Otto Collins and Philip Williams, claimed that they ran into a giant hairy-covered ape-like thing outside of Marshall, Michigan in May of 1956. According to their story, the creature picked them up, one on each arm, and while their alarmed companion Herman Williamson scrambled for his gun, the beast dropped them and ambled off. They said that it had big green eyes. They were as big as light bulbs. Light bulbs. It smelled like something rotten. Number 18. Beginning report number 28, beginning around 1962, folks living in the vicinity of Sister Lakes, Michigan, started seeing something 9 feet tall that made a whimpering sound. Then in May 1964, monster mania hit the region in full force. A man named Gordon Brown told how he and his brother had seen the creature one night and followed its tracks. "We come to a tree," Brown said, "and while I knew there were no trees there before, well, woo-wee, this thing was standing there. Well, we hightailed it right out of there. 3 teenage girls met the creature in broad daylight while walking along the side of the road in Silver Creek Township. Joyce Smith fainted on the spot. Patsy and Gail Clayton stood motionless, paralyzed with fear, as this thing charged off into underbrush. It didn't look like a man, Joyce said. Patsy described it as being about 7 feet tall with a black face. John Utrup. So John Utrup told the Cass County Sheriff that he had seen the monster several times. One night, as he was driving into his yard, he saw it standing behind a bush. It had big, bright, shining eyes. He said Mrs. Utrup told of how one of her shepherd dogs chased the monster one night and came back with a pupil of one eye turned a pale blue color. Weeks later, the eye returned to normal. Oh, that's weird. Many other witnesses came forward and were named, and the extensive newspaper account, hundreds of people flocked to Sister Lakes, and the usual feudal monster hunt took place. Local drive-ins did a big business selling monster burgers, and station WSJM had a sponsored program of new monster reports and special monster music. Professor Frank E. Eggleton of the University of Michigan Zoology Department announced that he thought the monster was a gorilla. Dr. William H. Burt, another zoologist at the university, disagreed. It could be a black bear, Dr. Burt said. The only trouble is they usually don't wander that far south in Michigan. Bears are about 3 feet tall at adult height, standing on all fours. When they get up on their hind legs, which they occasionally do to look around, they might be 5 to 6 feet. It is true that the monster has been roaming around. If it is true the monster has been roaming around this area for 2 years, it certainly wouldn't be a gorilla, since they couldn't survive that long in this climate outdoors, Burt concluded. Report 29. In August 1965, the monster returned to Michigan, this time to the placid little community of Monroe, due east of Sister Lake and Cass County. We must add that the entire area is also one of major UFO windows in the United States. The celebrated Michigan flying saucer sightings on March 1966 took place in Hillsdale, which lies directly between Monroe and Sister Lakes. I wonder if it's the same, because I live real close to both of those places, by the way. Although I'm in Ohio, I live on the border of Michigan. And my son's mother has a cottage in Hillsdale. There have been thousands of UFO sightings in this immediate area since 1896. 16 people reportedly encountered a monster in June and July 1965. Things really got serious when 2 attacks occurred in a single week. On Wednesday, August 11th, David Thomas was driving a group of women home near a neighborhood baby shower when the thing jumped in front of their car. Thinking that it was a neighbor or a prankster, Thomas got out of his car to take a swing at it. When he discovered that it towered above his 6-foot frame, he prudently decided to return to his car. It struck him in the back, he said, throwing him against the auto. He leaped back into it and drove off as the hairy arm thumped on the roof and fenders. Other people in the immediate area saw the creature the same night. Keith Mercer said he fired his shotgun at it. Some witnesses described it as smelling moldy. Most agreed that it was at least 7 feet tall, hairy, and had very long arms. It grunted and growled like a mad dog. On Friday night, August 13th, Mrs. Rose Owen and her daughter, Christine Van Archer, said the monster ran alongside her car, jumped on the side of it, and reached through the open window and grabbed Christine by the hair. We both screamed, but the monster kept beating her head against the door until Christine fainted. Mrs. Owen said I jumped out of the car and ran to... What? Really? Ran to a house for help. Christine had a black eye from the adventure. Her photo was widely published, even in Time magazine. Another girl, Shirley Morin of Temperance, Michigan, that's really close to me, that's about maybe 5-10 minutes from me, said a giant hairy thing jumped on her car, too, breaking her windshield and scratching her arm. Once again, that's something maybe to remember there for me. Should I write that down? I'm going to write that down. Let me write that down. I could put that in my book. In fact, I might quote that in my book, because there are reports near my area, that turns out, but it's in Michigan and not in Ohio. This is important information for me. Page 90 to 92, let's put that. Michigan sightings. Strange creatures from time and space. Anyways, our book. I'm shocked. And actually, I heard somebody, and she never called me back. She never tried. She did reach out to me, but then I problems. I don't have a cell phone. She gave me a phone number. I can't make long distance phone calls. My son has a cell phone, but he can't make long distance phone calls either. So I can't call her. I asked her if she'd call me back, or if she would give me or Facebook message me, but she wouldn't. She did. But it was interesting about her. She said her father saw Bigfoot in Maumee, Ohio. And he used to see him quite often. And that's just down the road from me. In fact, I used to go fishing there quite a bit. And the first 2 years of my life, we lived in Perrysburg, Ohio. Was on the other side of the Maumee River there. So now I live in a different place on the border of Michigan, about 20 minutes away. 12 miles away from there. So, as mundane and boring as this place is, it is a good place to raise a child. It's so unpleasant, especially in the winter, that nobody wants to come here. And this for another story. That's another time, another story. Anyways. So this Shirley Morin of Temperance, Michigan, said a giant hairy thing jumped on her car, too, and breaking her windshield and scratching her arm. Once again, armed posses combed the area in futile search. It had vanished. So all these incidences were coincidentally in the vicinity of Enrico Fermi Atomic Power Plant. Is that what that's called? I know we have the power plant. Yeah, I guess so. It's with, yeah, I guess you could say that. It's within half an hour or that kind of thing. A few months later, the plant was shut down temporarily because of mysterious sabotage. Mississippi. Case number 30, a Lost Gap. A heavily wooded area about 5 miles east of Meridian, Mississippi, was gripped with monster mania in 1962. It began when a group of teenagers reported seeing a green-eyed monster 6 to 9 feet tall. Soon there were dozens of other corroborating witnesses. Chief Deputy Alton Allen said he was convinced that the monster existed, and a huge search party was organized. Bloodhounds and helicopters were brought into play, but nothing was found. 9 years earlier, according to one story, railroad men working in the area where the monster was later seen found that their compasses would not work. At case number 31, two truck drivers, William and James Cagle, were headed for Marietta, Georgia on the Tuesday night, November 8th, 1966, and as they rounded a curve near Winona, Mississippi, a strange creature ran down a slope towards their vehicle. When my headlights picked him up, he was on our left side. James Cagle explained he was aggressive, angry, and ready to attack. The face looked like a mixture of a gorilla and a human. The arms and legs were very large. The chest was at least 3 feet thick. His eyes glowed in the dark and did not seem to have pupils. It looked us over, then slowly raised an arm like an Indians do when they greet someone. I had seen all I wanted. I floorboard the accelerator and we moved out there. Rumors were flying around Winona, Mississippi in the fall of 1966. A 7-foot-tall monster with bright red eyes covered with hair was allegedly on the prowl. One man claimed that it had 4-foot shoulders, which tapered to a narrow waist. It was the size of a Kodiak bear, he said. Local rumors that the thing had been shot or captured proved groundless. Missouri, case 32. In the late 1940s, a cow-killing animal is supposed to have turned up in Niagara Wool Swamp. I guess it'd be Niagara Wool Swamps and southeast Missouri. It was said to rip apart full-grown cows and horses, abandoning the carcasses without eating them. Someone shot the animal, and the flimsy reports state that it looked something like a gorilla. Unfortunately, we know nothing more about this incident. In case number 33, a bear-like animal stepped out of some woods in Kinloch, a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri, in July 1968, and grabbed a 4-year-old child playing in the backyard. The child's aunt screamed, and the family dog went after the animal. It dropped the child and returned to the woods. The boy was later shown a model of a gorilla, and he said the animal had resembled it. Police searched the woods and found no tracks, no signs of the animal. Montana, case 34, Harold E. Nelson was driving across country when he pulled his camper off the highway to settle down for the night outside of Billings, Montana on Wednesday, September 11, 1968. As he was gulping down a can of beans, he heard a noise outside the camper. So he picked up a flashlight to take a look, and when he opened the door, he found a huge thing staring straight at him. It had an ape-like face, but it was definitely not a gorilla. Nelson said later the head was slightly pointed, sloping down like the sketches of a caveman, and the whole body was covered in reddish-brown hair. There were a few spots of white hair along the edges of the enormous shoulders. It stood erect like a man and must have weighed 600, 800 pounds. He was big, real big. At a long moment of total immobility, Nelson scrambled back into his camper to find his gun. The creature peered in the door curiously and then turned and shuffled off into the darkness. New Jersey. Case 35. 5 students from Spring Garden Institute at Philadelphia reportedly heard unearthly screams while camping near Lake Atchison, in Burlington County, New Jersey in 1960. We were pretty much on edge, said Burley Swind. After finding 4 large tracks early in the underbrush near our camp. They were about 11 inches long, and they looked something like a large bird print with the heel of a dog in and a toe spread out. Case 36. On April 15, 1966, in Trenton, New Jersey, Evening Times carried a story asserting that a new wave of animal disappearances was taking place in Burlington County. Mr. Stanley Silcoach, something like that. Silcoach, I could say that, said he thought he had solved the mystery when he shot a raccoon on April 8th, but his 2 dogs disappeared a short time later. The state trooper named Alfred Potter found a footprint so large a man's hand could not cover it. Several months later, an investigator denounced the whole affair as a peculiarly vicious joke. Case 37. Towards dusk on the evening of May 21st, 1966, Raymond Todd and 3 friends were parked in an automobile in the Morristown National Historical Park, Morristown, New Jersey, when they saw a very tall, at least 7 foot tall, entity ambling across the lawn. They described it as being faceless, covered with long black hair, and with scaly skin. What impressed them most was the breadth of the creature. It had huge shoulders, they said, and walked erect with a stiff rocking movement, and they were absolutely certain that it was not a bear or other known creature. The quarter became hysterical and drove to the entrance of the park, where they stopped cars and warned people that there was a monster in loose. Todd stopped a car driven by a young lady, name withheld by request, and had her rush him to Morristown Municipal Hall, where he reported the encounter to the police. The police said that his fear and hysteria were genuine. Case 38. By strange coincidence, the young ladies substantiated Todd's story with her own. She said that she and 3 others had seen a similar monster in the same area a year earlier. Her group had been parked in the dark when they heard a thumping in the back of their car. They looked out the rear window and saw a huge form standing over the car. It was very tall and had very broad shoulders. They could not see its head. They drove away in a state of panic, but did not report the episode to the authorities. The girl's mother urged her not to mention the incident to anyone. Letter from a young man in Sherman, New York. I was writing because 3 or 4 years ago, circa 1965 through 66, I saw a white monster in the swamp beside our house. I have been seeing these things ever since then, and close to our house. One night it came down in our yard. It stands between 12 to 18 feet tall. It has a long tail between 6 to 8 feet long. It is all covered with hair. They were always white. I have seen them alone or two at a time. They can walk on 2 feet or 4 feet. It is almost a double for the prehistoric sloth. My whole family has seen this thing, and I know of 2 more men who have seen them. I am 15 years old, and I am not kidding. I have seen these things, and they are real. Case 40. Hersey reports a giant, hairy humanoid blundering about in the woods near Ekatha during a major UFO flap in the area in the fall of 1967. One story claims that a group of teenage UFO buffs searching in the woods encountered the creature, and it tore the boy's jacket. Ohio. On March 28, 1955, 3 teenagers, Michael Lane and Wayne Armstrong and Denny Patterson, that sounds so familiar. Oh, this is Mansfield, okay. Were badly frightened by something near Charles Mill Reservoir outside of Mansfield, Ohio. That's part of my story, that's that place. Especially my first encounter and that strange character called Crow and his story of what he did with his friends in Mansfield, Ohio. They said a giant 7-foot-tall being seemed to rise up off the ground in front of them. It had glowing green eyes and no arms were visible. Strange tracks were later found at the site. Case 42. In 1963, a thing paid another visit to Mansfield. Many witnesses reported seeing a creature 7 to 8 feet tall, covered with gray hairs and having large luminous eyes. It was definitely not a bear, said C.W. Koch. It was more like a gorilla. The usual fruitless search was held. Case 43, a monster man has reportedly been living quietly in a tunnel in Cleveland, Ohio's Riverside Cemetery for the past 25 years. One of the people who claims to have seen it, Mrs. Grace Lewis, describes him as a big hairy man weighing 400 pounds. According to local theorists, the monster man was obliged to move when the highway construction demolished his haven. For his new home, he picked a very logical place, a woods directly behind Cleveland Zoo. The Cleveland Zoo. On Monday night, April 22, 1968, a couple of youths came face to face with something weird in those woods. It's 8 feet tall and covered with hair. William Schwark said later, I chased it Monday and it knocked me down the slope. Another boy claimed the thing grabbed him and ripped his jacket and left deep scratches in his shoulders. The word got out quickly, and within a few days the woods were filled with teenagers armed with flashlights, baseball bats, and ropes. A white sheet with burn marks in it, and some chicken feathers were discovered in the area. But as usual, the hairy unbelievable eluded the pursuers and disappeared without a trace. The local police remained skeptical of the whole affair. Oregon, case 44. 28 people and around Yankton, Oregon, reportedly saw tall, hairy humanoids in 1926. One ran alongside a moving truck looking into the cab. Sheep and children are supposed to have disappeared mysteriously in the area that year. In case 45, in the summer of 1942, Mr. Don Hunter, head of the audio visual department of the University of Oregon, and his wife were vacationing at Todd Lake, Oregon. One afternoon, they were sitting in their car waiting for a rainstorm to pass over when they suddenly saw an unusually tall figure striding across the meadow about a quarter of a mile from the lake. It was not humped over, but very erect, with a military bearing. Hunter said later, "What?" The legs seemed very long, and he did not run, he walked. Giant strides were very quickly. And getting out of the car, we must have been heard, because it took off for the trees with giant strides. Case 46. In fall of 1957, Gary Jonas and Jim Newell reportedly saw a giant human-like figure while hunting near Winoga, Butter, Oregon. Mr. Jonas had just shot a deer, and the tall being came out of the bushes suddenly, picked the dead animal up with one arm, and walked off quickly with tremendous strides. The creature was not less than 9 feet tall, with very long hair on its arms. It made a noise like a very strange whistling scream. Case 47. 2 boys from Rosenberg, Oregon, told state police that they had seen a 14-foot man-like creature in a nearby woods on Wednesday, July 29, 1959. They said it was covered with hair and walked upright and had human characteristics. They saw it first on a previous Friday, but did not tell their parents because we didn't think anyone would believe us. They returned to the spot again, armed with a rifle. The monster reappeared, and one of the boys fired 5 shots at it from a range of about 50 yards. It ran off screaming like a cat, but louder, he said. Police found human-like tracks 14 feet long, showing 5 toes. The boys were certain it was not a bear. Case 48. Did you hear the one about the walking tree stump? This is very interesting. Walking tree stump. The Spokane, Washington Spokesman Review carried this on November 18, 1966. Newport, Oregon, AP. People in this coastal logging area didn't believe 16-year-old Kathy Reeves when she told them about the 3 little stumps that walked across the pasture. Not only did they move, said Kathy, but they also were of different colors: orange, light blue, white, yellow, and watermelon colors. That was 6 months ago. Since then, 25 people have seen the unidentified flying objects, and 15 statements were taped by newsmen. Later, Reeves' home on Pioneer Mountain was haunted by strange balls of light which flittered flitted from room to room. Investigating police officers and reporters also saw the lights. The family finally moved out. Several others in the same area told police they had been seeing giant humanoid figures with single eyes in the middle of their foreheads. Pennsylvania. Case 49. In a letter to the editor in Real Magazine, August 1967, Mr. Mario W. Pinardi claimed that he and another person saw and tracked a 9-foot-tall gorilla-like creature in an open field near Alston, Pennsylvania. Case number 50. A 6-foot-tall person or thing was seen by 7 persons on the shore of Edinburgh Lake, Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, Wednesday night, August 17, 1966. The witnesses fired at the figure on 2 occasions with weapons they had taken along. Apparently the creature was not hit, said the Erie, Pennsylvania Times, August 19, 1966. A heavy UFO flap was taking place in the area at the time. Another tall, unidentified creature had been seen in Presque Island. That's not how you pronounce it. I can't remember. Presque Island? But I can't remember it. So Presque Isle, July 30th, 1st. Some 18 miles from Edinburgh. One report claimed that a man had come face to face with the Edinburgh monster near the lake and had been so badly frightened that he was unable to speak for 3 days. Hoarseness and loss of voice has occurred in a number of close UFO sightings in recent years. Tennessee. Number 51, a wild man of the woods was allegedly captured in Tennessee in 1878 and placed in an exhibition in Louisville, Kentucky. He was described as being 6 feet 5 inches tall, with eyes twice normal size. His body was covered with fish scales. Case number 52, Collapse Chapel Road residents outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, fired a shotgun at an apparition 8 to 10 feet tall on September 24, 1959. The creature had come up to the window on the front porch of Earl Taylor's house. John Rosenbaum joined Taylor in fighting it off. They heard thumps on Taylor's car and later found 2 large scratches on the hood, which had not been there when he polished the car earlier in the day. The creature disappeared without a trace. Case 53, Brenda Ann Adkins reported meeting a hairy creature on Mount Eagle Mountain north of Chattanooga, Tennessee, in the spring of 1968. She had stopped near the edge of a cliff to take some pictures when she became aware of a nauseating odor and heard a noise in the woods behind her. Turning, she saw the thing lumbering towards her. I was absolutely frozen with fear, she said. This thing was at least 7 feet tall and must have weighed several hundred pounds. I'll never forget his enormous chest and those huge arms and legs. His body was completely covered with blackish red hair. The face was a mixture of an ape and a human. I still have nightmares about the afternoon. He seemed to be angry and was growling. I thought he would push me off the cliff or something. Then he stopped about 6 feet from where I stood, cocked his head in a quizzical way, and just stared at me. He studied me for a few moments and then seemed to smile, made a little blundering noise, and walked back into the bush. Case 54. Lake Worth is the major reservoir for Fort Worth, Texas. A hairy monster lives there. Back in 1967, something described as a sitar-like org was scaring folks around Mesquite Point at the lake. A band of teenagers searched the area but never even caught a glimpse of it. Greer Island is where about a dozen people say they recently saw a monster. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram reported on July 12, 1969, descriptions of the monster have ranged from a half-man, half-ghost thing, yes, with fur and scales, to a 7-foot, 300-pound hairy, hoary being that throws auto tires 500 feet. The 1969 report came on Wednesday night, on July 9, 1969, when 3 couples told police that the creature had pounced on their car and left scratch marks on the hood. Another motorist said he saw a big hairy thing which emitted a squall and then tossed a tire and rim from more than 500 feet. A local naturalist suggested that the culprit might have been a playful bobcat. Sheriff Lone Evans was less concerned about bobcats and monsters than he was about the hordes of trigger-happy motorists who began patrolling the lake with loaded weapons. The 7-foot, 300-pound half-man, half-goat was seen throughout 1969. See a rat here. I need to take a break. Take a break. Driver 8. Washington. Case 55. Report of a tall, hairy man bouncing across Highway 112 recently have stirred up the west end of Calam County. The Port Angeles, Washington Evening News announced on July 3, 1964, it was reported that a Air Force man from Niabey, is that what it is? Was driving between Niabey and Kyle and saw a tall, hairy man cross the highway in 3 bounds. Footprints were reportedly found in the area. The serviceman was also reported to be a teetotaler. Teetotaler, whatever that pronounce it. Teetotaler, drinker, whatever. Case 56, a lady in the area, Mrs. George Wright, wrote to tell us that she and her husband had come across some giant footprints on a logging road the day after Thanksgiving, 1964. Interestingly, Mrs. Wright reported there was only one print, almost directly in the center of the 12-foot stretch of soft mud, and my own footprints, no others. She continued, the sighting of Bob Harrison was a year or two earlier, during the hunting season, when they were all out to their cabin on forest land at Pyshet. I don't know how to pronounce it. Pysht. Pyshet? I don't know. He was hunting when he and the creature both looked over some bushes. into each other's faces. When asked why he didn't shoot, he said it looked too human. Later on his story changed to where it could have been a bear with a very scary, screwed up face. They backed away from each other and took off in different directions. Case 57, late Monday evening, September 19th, 1966, Ken Pittejohn was driving home outside of Yakima, Washington, when he rounded a bend and came up upon a huge man covered with silvery white hair standing in the middle of the road. There was a drizzling rain, and Pittejohn slammed on his brakes and his engine stalled. The creature raised an arm as if to shield its face from the bright headlights. While Pittejohn frantically tried to start his engine, the tall figure walked around the back of the car. The engine finally turned over, and Pittejohn could see the figure in his rearview mirror as he drove off, the silhouetted by the lightning. Case 58. At 4 a.m. on Wednesday, March 5, 1969, Don Cock drove around a bend on Highway 14 near Beacon Road State Park in Skamania County, Washington, when a monstrous creature appeared on the road in front of his headlights. It was, he said, 8 to 10 feet tall, with a face like an ape. It ran like a man and was covered with fuzzy fur. Cox stated, I had just come out of a fog bank that had caused me to slow my car when I first saw what I thought to be a tree leaning towards the middle of the road. I slowed my car further and turned my headlights to high beam, and it was then that I saw this fur-covered human form with the face of an ape. He ran across the road in front of the car, leaped up a 40-degree slope, and disappeared in the woods. Deputy John Mason investigated and found smears which indicated that the creature had made an 8-foot jump up the embankment. It's a feat beyond the capabilities of any bear. Okay. In April of 1969, the Skamania County Board of Commissioners passed an ordinance making it illegal to kill a Sasquatch, providing a $10,000 fine and up to 5 years in imprisonment. Case 59, at 2:30 a.m. Sunday, July 27, 1969, Deputy Floyd Son was driving along a deserted wooded road north of Hoquiam, Washington. I'm trying to think how to pronounce Hoquiam. So it's Hoquiam, Washington. When he had to slam on his brakes to avoid colliding with an animal standing directly in front of him. He got out of his car and pointed his spotlight at the animal. It was, he said, 8 feet tall, with a human-like face, but was covered with hair except for the feet and hands. He estimated that it must have weighed about 300 pounds. Somewhat dismayed, he drew his pistol, but the animal ran off into the woods. Police searched the area for footprints the next morning, but it was too gravelly. Sheriff Pat Gallagher said he thought it could have been a bear. Deputy Son grumbled it sure didn't look like one. A former Hoquiam resident now living in Seattle, Mr. Richard Floyd, declared, "There is a serious possibility here of police brutality. This blatant intimidation of what appears to be a visitor from our neighbor to the north must stop." Mr. Floyd announced plans to form a protective organization to be called Don't Upset Poor Excitable Sasquatches, DUPES for short. West Virginia, Case 60. In the summer of 1960, a group of young men were camping in the woods near Davis, West Virginia. One night, one of them was cutting wood for the fire when he heard a noise and felt someone poking him in the ribs. He thought one of his friends was trying to scare him and turned around annoyed to find himself confronted with a horrible monster. He described it. It had two huge eyes that shone like big balls of fire, and we had no light at all. It stood every bit of 8 feet tall and had shaggy long hair all over its body. It just stood and stared at us. The eyes were very far apart. By the time the boys had recovered from their shock, the creature had shuffled off into the darkness. They broke camp early next morning. Gigantic footprints were found where the creature had been, but the witnesses did not feel like following them. Case 61. A West Virginian named W.C. Doc Priestley claimed that a hairy humanoid ruined the electrical system of his automobile in 1960. That summer, numerous people around Parson, West Virginia, allegedly saw a gruesome 8-foot-tall thing covered with shaggy hair and equipped with two huge eyes when shone like a big ball of fire. And October 1960, Priestley was driving through the Monongahela National Forest, about 3 miles north of Marlington, West Virginia, when his car, which had been purring like a kitten, suddenly sputtered and stopped. Then I saw it, Priestley later told reporters of the Charlotte, West Virginia Daily Mail, July 5, 1961. To my left, beside the road, stood a monster. This monster with long hair pointing straight up towards the sky. A group of Priestley's friends were driving on ahead in a bus. When they noticed that he was no longer directly behind them, they turned around and drove back to look for him. I didn't know how long I sat there, Priestley continued, until the boys missed me and backed the bus back to where I was. It seemed this monster was very much afraid of the bus and dropped his hair, which had been standing on end, and to my surprise, as soon as he did this, my car started to run again. I didn't tell the boys what I'd seen. The thing took off when the bus stopped. Priestley again started to follow along behind the bus, and then his car started to act up a second time. I could see the sparks flying from under the hood of my car as if it had a very bad short, he noticed. And sure enough, there beside the road stood a monster again. The points were completely burnt out of my car. The bus backed up again, and as soon as it appeared, the monster melted into the forest. Case 62. At 11 p.m. Friday, December 30th, 1966, when, as he rounded a curve on a lonely backwoods road near Hicker Flats, West Virginia, between Braxton and Webster counties. Charles Strove came up upon a monster standing erect with hair all over its body. Stover said that he, did I say Stover there? I meant to say Stover. Stover said he almost hit the thing and stopped his bakery truck a short distance away to look back. The hairy 6-foot-tall man-shaped figure stood beside the road watching him. He stepped on the gas and finally stopped at a restaurant filling station, where he told his story to a group of men. They immediately armed themselves and went to the spot. They found strange marks on the ground and that a large rock had been turned over by something. Scattered residents of the area said they had been hearing unusual cries in the woods for several weeks. The Stover story is another classic in monster lore. Wisconsin. Case 63. A large, powerfully built man covered with hair was seen by 3 men in the Deltock Marsh in Wisconsin on October 17, 1968. The same men, together with 9 others, encountered it again on November 30th. On the first occasion, they tried to follow it, but it eluded them in a thick underbrush. On November 30th, the 12 men were combing the swamp looking for it. They found it, but didn't shoot because it was too man-like. Again, it got away. Burma. Case 64. Our favorite wire service, Reuters, reported the following dateline: June 12, 1969, Lagoon, Burma. Rangoon. 2 giant monkey men recently sighted roaming the jungles along the Mekong River near the Thai-Burma-Laos border have been terrifying local villagers. According to the press reports, the 2 creatures are said to be about 10 feet tall. The monkey men were first sighted by a group of hunters led by a local preacher in the Tamilek area. However, the hunters were so frightened by the creatures that they fled without firing a shot. A few days later, a farmer reported seeing the 2 creatures by moonlight in his fields. He said they made sounds like those of a child crying. A Rangoon daily newspaper, The Light of Burma, said the third sighting was made by a group of Lahu guerrillas. The guerrillas had run for their lives after one of the creatures hurled a rock at them. The newspaper gave no dates on when the sightings were made, but said the creatures had khaki-colored hair on their bodies. Canada. Case 65. Commercial artist John Osborne was sitting on a dike at the foot of number 3 road in Richmond, British Columbia on Thursday, July 21st, 1966, when a large creature appeared on the edge of a nearby woods. It wasn't ape-like, Osborne said. It was like a big hairy man about 6 feet, 8 to 7 feet tall. So he's saying it's about 6'8" to 7 feet tall. He watched it for 10 or 15 seconds, then it walked behind a tree and disappeared. He looked the spot over but could find no footprints. A week earlier, Don Gilmore reported seeing a big woolly animal stampede about 100 head of cattle on number 8 road in Richmond. Osborne drew a sketch of this hairy man, and it was published in the Vancouver, British Columbia Sun, July 22, 1966. Case 66. In the fall of 1966, there's a lot of 66 of there, right? 2 engineers engaged in a Geological Survey between Vancouver and Chilliwack, British Columbia, came upon a small lake about 200 yards across. They were amazed to see an ape standing on the other side of the lake looking at them. They watched the animal for half an hour and finally decided to leave the area as quickly as possible. Later they returned and found footprints in the snow which they photographed. Case 67 from Powell River News, British Columbia, February 29, 1968. Albert Bay fishermen Tom Brown and Harry Woonok were digging clams on the south shore of Broughton Island, about 25 miles northeast of Alert Bay, only a short swim from the mainland, when they say they encountered a hairy monster. There was still plenty of light to see that it was not an animal. Brown said it was hairy, about 6 feet tall, and was looking at us. That's about all we saw of it. Harry and I ran as fast as we could for the boat, and the Sasquatch headed into the bush. I don't know how the Sasquatch took it, but we all wanted to do is get away. Case number 68. A logger in British Columbia, Gordon Baum, reported seeing a hairy-covered man-like animal leap over a 4-foot pile of logs at Salmon Arm Inlet on Thursday, June 27, 1968. It must have been a Sasquatch. Baum was quoted as saying in the Vancouver province, "It moved on 2 legs like a man. It ran like a man, but no man can move that fast. He was gone in 2 seconds. He was about 5 foot tall, very stocky and heavy built." And here's case 69. Updated clipping from the Midday Standard, England, August 1969. Giant strides over ravine. Rocky Mountain House, Alberta, Saturday. 3 workmen at the Bighorn Dam site claim they have seen a humanoid figure almost 3 times the size of an average man. 2 of the men said that they saw the figure about 15 feet tall striding across the ravine. The third saw it watching the site from a hill. Indians believe there is a family of 4 of the creatures living in the area. South America, case 70. Between 1952 and 65, there were 18 documented cases of people in Argentina, Venezuela, and Brazil being attacked and injured by unidentified hairy creatures in human form. Some of these cases have been widely commented on in UFO literature. In 1964, a truck driver named Alberto Calbermatter was driving along a desert road outside of Resistencia, Argentina, late at night, when a 9-foot-tall creature suddenly stepped in front of him and uttered a loud, terrifying cry. He said it had long black hair and a human-like face. He stepped on the gas and nearly running over the creature as he fled. A strange luminous object had been sighted in the trees at the very same spot a few days earlier. According to local police, they said that Calbermatter was an extremely frightened man when he reported his monster to them. Spain, case 71. In Spain, the Valladolid district near Barcelona suffered an onslaught of unbelievables on February 1968. The original reports were made by frightened children, but soon many adults had also seen a giant hairy creature. According to the newspaper Arabiba, February 27, 1968, the animal was drinking from a pond near the house of the witnesses. It fled, leaving in the clay soil a number of great footprints 40 centimeters long and resembling those of a plantigrade being, i.e., one that walks on the whole sole of the foot. These footprints agree with descriptions given by motorist Roberto Juar, who said that he had seen near Hostelric a few days ago an animal with large hairy body, long arms, crossed the highway in front of him, walking with a weary sort of gait. No gorillas or bears were missing from any zoo or circus, the newspaper reported. A major panic mounted in the region. Massive searches were held with the usual negative results. A number of interesting comparisons can be drawn from the foregoing viewed cumulatively. These random sightings reveal several hitherto hidden aspects. We can now categorize these events and speculate that there are two main groups. Group 1 consists of real animals possessing common characteristics of appearance and behavior. Group 2 are monsters in the true sense of the word and seem to be part of the paranormal phenomena, like ghosts and flying saucers. That is, they are a problem for parapsychologists rather than biologists. They are something else. In Table 10.1, we have organized these sightings by years, from 1956 to 1969. Actually, our pre-1960 data is scanty since the subject was not too well known or publicized until Ivan T. Sanderson published his article, The Strange Story of America's Abominable Snowman, in True Magazine, December 1959. Before that, the subject was almost entirely in the hands of a very small group of enthusiasts who collected Fortinia, like Charles Fort, or Fortinia, and flying saucer busts who pounced upon every oddity that appeared in the press. Almost single-handedly, Sanderson brought these events to the public's attention and created a broader interest. Before 1960, only those very few events which created major scares or received a wire service attention were preserved by the tiny monster buffery. Thus, we have only a total of 8 reports between 1956 and 1959, and 52 reports from the 10 years which followed. Until 1966, there was no organized effort to keep close tabs on the flying saucer sightings, and professional researchers were forced to rely upon superficial, often erroneous tables and statistics compiled by the United States Air Force. There was a great surge of UFO activity in the early 1960s, and in 1962 was a flap year. That year produced 5 monster sightings for our table. There was another massive UFO surge in 1965 and an almost overwhelming wave in 1966. These flaps attracted more people to the UFO coterie, and reporting improved greatly. So the year 1966 produced Fortean monster cases. There were really many more than that. We have detailed some of the others in the general text. Flying saucer sightings remained high in 1967 through 69, although the new events received little or no publicity. The United States Air Force received only 38 UFO reports in March 1968, compared with 165 in March 1967 and 158 in March 1966. It has been reliably estimated that fewer than 2% of all UFO sightings are reported to the Air Force at all. So even if the statistics were accurate, which they aren't, they would not fully represent the overall situation. Witnesses of monsters very rarely report to the local newspapers or police and never to the Air Force. In our travels around the country, we have uncovered many spectacular cases which had never received any publicity of any kind. Often when the witnesses tells his family and friends about the incidents, he is so heavily ridiculed that he shuts up. In most cases, the man or woman who does report to the police and newspaper is not taken seriously. We have to keep repeating this vital point throughout this book. If you encountered a 10-foot tall creature covered with moss and slime, with two huge luminous red eyes, who would you tell? And do you think anyone would take you seriously? I imagine not. In fact, I know they wouldn't, because I have to go through it myself. Table 10.1, creating creature sightings by years, not including those detailed in the main text, and it's got this graph from 1956 through 60, and then there's the numbers, not very high, and then from 61 to 69, things start increasing a little bit. And these events are being taken more seriously now by larger numbers of people. Our channels for communicating these experiences have improved greatly. The handful of well-equipped researchers involved now are more better data to work from, and we are finally getting very close to a solution to all these mysteries. One of the most disturbing factors of the monster cases is the high ratio of hostile events in which human beings and animals have been deliberately attacked. Similar hostility is apparent in many UFO reports, but these hostile aspects are played down and suppressed by UFO courtiers which prefer to believe that flying saucers are benevolent. In Table 10.2, we summarize the forms of hostility encountered. It is significant that automobiles were concerned in the 16 of these cases, approximately 25% of the total. This ratio is very high, even higher in UFO reports. Then you get Table 10.2, hostile attacks by humans and animals, on humans, animals, and automobiles. Automobiles 16%. Autos damaged by claws for, it's not percent, 16 cases. 4 cases for the claws, damaged by claws. Human beings attacked and injured 8. Animals attacked and injured or killed and mutilated. Animal disappearance 6. The tire thrown at witnesses 2. And we've got something going on here. I know what's going on here. Probably start all over again here. Okay. Don't know why that does that, why it has a glitch like that, but it does.
Total.
What the hell did I just do that for? What's going on? I lost my bearing here. Why is this up there now? Let's revamp and see what happens. Still there. Okay. I'll expand that a little bit. With a few notable exceptions, the witnesses most often describe the creatures' faces as being either human-like or a cross between human and a gorilla or ape. The protuberant mouth in case 4 may indicate a paranormal entity, as do the luminous eyes in 11 of the cases. Some animal eyes are highly reflective, of course, and seem to glow when a headlight or flashlight shines on them. But many witnesses claim that the creature's eyes were self-luminous and very bright, brighter than a reflection. There are very few ABSM reports which mention luminous or self-luminous eyes. On the other hand, luminous eyes are characteristics in many of the UFO occupant reports. In case 11, the witness said that the creature seemed to be more mechanical than alive. It moves stiffly and methodically, ignoring the dog snapping at its heels. Our Sasquatch would certainly have reacted differently. In forthcoming chapters, we will outline several other cases in which the creatures appear to be robots rather than living entities. Throughout this book, you will find incidences in which the witnesses describe hearing a sound like a woman screaming or a baby crying, a phenomenon is well known in ghost hunters, and there are many cases in which the sounds were heard in cemeteries and haunted houses all over the world. The woman screaming sound is definitely related to our monsters. This can be reproduced mechanically. For years, phony mediums used to reproduce this sound in seances by stroking a warm silver dollar over a piece of dry ice. It creates a shrill, unearthly scream. We have pulled this trick on a number of monster witnesses, and they reacted with alarm and recognition, saying that it was almost exactly what they had heard during their experience. Here in Table 10.4, we run down some of the general characteristics reported in the monster's events. There is only one case, 23, in which the creature dropped from an erect position and ran off on all fours like a bear. My first sighting, which was a Sasquatch, and it ran, and it seemed like it ran, and it was leaned over like a professional bicyclists, you know what I mean, when they're on their bicycle and they lean forward. That's how it seemed like. Other aspects of the report take it out of the ABSM category. In case 20 and 54, we have a couple of oddballs. One describes as a half man, half horse, a centaur, and the other is a half man. Why can't I get there? See, that's what happened there. Why is that in the way? How do I get rid of that? That didn't work out well. Let's see. Wow. Okay, well, that's interesting that that showed up there, but not. Half goat. So half man, half goat, a classic satire. These could have been merely subjective impressions, or perhaps the reporter writing the story either misinterpreted the witness's description or added a few embellishments of his own. In a 1957 Little Man case in New Jersey, the local reporter touched up the story by saying the creature was wearing a jaunty tam o'shanter. This detail has duly been bandied about in the UFO literature ever since. A jaunty tam o'shanter. And we have a ice hockey rink called Tam O'Shanter, where I live. Anyways, general characteristics of creatures sighted. Characteristics. Like a woman screaming, 6. Whistling scream, 1. A child crying, 1. Gurgling or blubbering, 2. Displayed extraordinary agility and made great leaps, 5. Dropped from erect position into 4, 1. Appearance occupied by an unpleasant odor, 5. 5 of our sample cases mentioned a pungent nasty odor similar to the smell described in so many of the Asian accounts. And the group 1 type is, as we said, an animal or even several different kinds of animals still unknown to science. It is hostile only when threatened or attacked. It seems to be intelligent, perhaps it even has a high order of intelligence, as high, say, as that of a dolphin. This intelligence had made it almost as elusive and cunning as man himself. The footprints and other physical evidence accumulated over the years lend further credence to the eyewitness's testimony. These creatures exist, but this creature exists, but he does not want anything to do with man, and who could blame him? Group 2 comprise of real mystery. They appear and disappear suddenly, as if they never existed at all. They rarely leave footprints or other physical evidence behind. They seem to be more in the nature of paranormal and paraphysical apparitions. They attack people and automobiles, causing scratches, bruises, and black eyes. They chase cars and carry off cattle. They scream like banshees, and maybe they are the original banshees of folklore. And despite their great height, weight, and girth, they melt into nothingness when the posses turn out. Since our data is admittedly only a fragment of all sightings, we can't guess at how long this has been going on or what the real scope of the phenomenon is. Worst of all, there is a stomach-wrenching possibility that we only hear about people who got away. And that seems to be that. That's a good place to stop. And then those silly flying saucer people, that'd be 11. It looks like we're about halfway through the book. Thank you for listening if you did.
If you're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you are going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.